Hi, boys and girls. We're continuing in our story called Benjamin's Box. We're on the third part of our story, or the fourth part, and we'll read 3 sections for today. Chloe's going to help us with the eggs and see what's inside of them from the resurrection eggs that go along with this. So we'll look at those in class together. Um, let's go ahead and read. Praying Hands is the title of this one. Later, Jesus and his friends left to pray. Benjamin wanted to pray too. He followed at a distance, watching as they finally stopped in a garden. Benjamin sat beneath an olive tree and broke off a twig. He couldn't hear Jesus, but he knew he was praying. Benjamin prayed too, and as he prayed, he rubbed the twig between his hands. Before long, his eyelids grew heavy, and he soon fell asleep. Loud yelling startled Benjamin. He leaped up in time to see soldiers taking Jesus away. "Stop!" he cried. "You can't take him. He hasn't done anything." "Shh, boy," said one of Jesus' friends, holding Benjamin back. "What's wrong?" demanded Benjamin. "Why are they taking him?" "They want to question him." Benjamin pulled away. "Why didn't you stop them?" But the man just shook his head and walked away. All Jesus' friends were gone now. Benjamin saw the smooth twig in his hand. "Dear God, please take care of my friend Jesus," he prayed as he walked away. At home, he placed the broken cup in the twig of his box. And this is an orange egg on that, Chloe. This is called the leather strip. "Benjamin, did you hear the news?" asked Eli the next morning. "They've locked Jesus up. Everyone says that Judas Iscariot got a bunch of money to betray him." Benjamin gasped. He had told Judas about the bribe. Maybe this was his fault. He said goodbye to Eli and he wandered through the city. What could he do? Was there any way to help? Sounds of shouting made him stop, and he turned to see an angry crowd. "Jesus, you deserved that beating," snarled an old man. "That heretic claims to be God's son." "He should be stoned," yelled another, shaking a fist. "What's going on?" asked Benjamin. "Did they hurt Jesus?" "What do you know about this Jesus?" demanded the old man. They all turned and stared at Benjamin with angry eyes. Nothing," he stammered. His gaze dropped to the ground, where he noticed a small strip of leather. He picked it up. It was from the whips used by soldiers. It was wet with blood. He tucked it in his tunic and slipped away. Why would anyone beat Jesus? And this one is the green egg, dark green. This next story is called The Thorn. And these are true stories, boys and girls, from the Bible. Except the story about Benjamin is made up, but the part about Jesus is true. Benjamin continued to walk. If only he could make them realize Jesus, release Jesus. But what could a small boy do? He heard loud cries as another crowd gathered at the end of the street. "Oh, hail, King of the Jews!" yelled a soldier as Benjamin pushed his way past men and women. And there stood Jesus. Benjamin looked into Jesus' eyes as Roman soldiers threw a shabby robe over his beaten back. He expected to see hatred, but instead he saw only love. Just then a soldier shoved a crown of thorns onto Jesus' head, and another struck him with a stick. Benjamin's eyes filled with tears. Why were they doing this? A few days ago, everyone had called Jesus a king when he entered Jerusalem. Now it seemed they all hated him. Benjamin squatted down and buried his head in his hands. "Please, God," he prayed over and over, Please make them stop. When he finally opened his eyes, the crowd had moved along. Jesus was gone. He walked over to where they had scorned his friend and picked up a sharp thorn broken from the awful crown. He ran home. His parents paused to hear his story, then sadly shook their heads and returned to their work. Benjamin placed the thorn and leather strip into his box and cried. That was the yellow egg. This next story is called The Nail. Benjamin, called Eli, have you heard? Jesus is to be crucified. Oh, no, cried Benjamin. He's done nothing to deserve that. Eli frowned. My father says that only the worst criminals are put to death on a cross. Benjamin went inside and sat in a dark corner of his house. He did not want to talk or even think about this sad news. But in his mind, he could still see the evil men hurting Jesus. I must go, he finally said aloud. If this is partly my fault, I can at least be there. I can pray for him. Where are you going? Asked his mother as they opened the door. To help a friend, he said. He nodded and touched his cheek. And she nodded and touched his cheek back. As Benjamin climbed the hill, he found a large spike. It was like those used by the Romans to nail criminals to crosses. He tucked it into his tunic and continued on. 3 crosses stood at the top, but he could not force his eyes to look upon his friend. He noticed a small group of people apart from the larger group. He knew they were Jesus' dearest friends. He sat near them and bowed to pray, but the only thing words that came to him were I'm sorry, God. I'm so sorry. And that was the golden yellow egg page. Oh, boys and girls, this is a very hard story to tell you because it is about our beloved Jesus, who was once a little baby in a manger. But he knew he would do all these things, and he came for you and me and your mommy and daddy and your grandparents and your brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and cousins and everyone in your neighborhood and everyone in this world. He came for all of us. And it is something he knew he would do. Even though it would hurt him, he knew he would do this. We'll continue in the next section tomorrow.